Vanakkam. Welcome to this course on biomedical instrumentation. In this video, we will look at origin of biopotentials. We have been looking at origin of biopotentials. In the previous video, we looked at electrochemical equilibrium and the source of electrochemical equilibrium and the source of resting membrane potential in the across the plasma membrane. In this video, we will look at action potential and the ionic basis of action potential. This topic is a little bit detailed, but I have decided to focus only on those things that matter for this course. For a more detailed treatment of this topic, refer to my other courses. My TS will share with you the links for the corresponding videos. Some terminology is of interest. One is depolarization. What is depolarization? The polarity of the plasma membrane of the excitable cell. For the excitable cell, the polarity is negative to start with. It's minus 70 millivolts. We have seen typical values. Making it a tad bit less negative or making it a bit more positive is called depolarization. This is making it a bit more positive. Repolarization is the situation in which the process of bringing the membrane potential back towards the resting membrane potential after a change. This is called as repolarization. From a relatively positive state coming back to the resting membrane potential is called as repolarization. You are doing it you are doing it again. Hyperpolarization is the situation in which the membrane becomes more negative than the resting membrane potential. This is the process of making the membrane tad bit more negative than the resting membrane potential itself. That is called that is hyperpolarization, more of the original polarization. What is the original polarization? The original polarization is negative, hyper of that is more negative of that. Okay. Inward current essentially is referring to the flow of positive ions from outside to the inside of the cell. So, if cations flow into the cell, it is called inward current. Outward current is the flow of positive charge from inside to the outside. That is, if cations flow outside, it is called outward current. Use the same logic, and what would be the current if chloride is flowing inside? Chloride is flowing inside. Chloride is a negative ion, is an anion. If it is flowing inside, the current is an outward current. Chloride is coming inside, the current is an outward current, because for every chloride ion that enters inside, it is as good as one positive ion leaving the cell. That is essentially an outward current. Okay. Overshoot is the situation in which the action potential is positive. Undershoot is a situation in which the action potential is more negative. Now, when you give a stimulus, that is, there is such a thing called as threshold. This is the situation in which the voltage gated sodium channel will open. This is the potential at which the voltage gated sodium channel will open. Below this value, this channel will not open. So, if there is a stimulus that is below the level of the threshold, that will immediately come back. After some time, it will come back to the resting membrane potential. What is causing this stimulus, subthreshold stimulus, to cause a response that is going to go back to resting membrane potential? Restorative mechanisms, some restorative mechanisms, for example, sodium potassium pump, so many other things like that is going to restore the membrane potential back to the original state. However, when threshold is reached, magic happens. That is why it is called as an action potential. Action happens when threshold is reached. What happens is, when threshold is reached, voltage gated sodium channels open and let in a lot of sodium. A huge amount of sodium enters inside, and this is called as the rising phase of the action potential or depolarization of the action potential. After some time, the aim of this sodium movement is to take the membrane potential to the sodium equilibrium potential. It turns out that the sodium equilibrium potential equilibrium potentials for sodium is about plus 60 millivolts, for potassium it is about minus 90 millivolts or minus 85 millivolts or something like that, right. So, because at 60 millivolts, at plus 60 millivolts, sodium does not have to move anywhere, you can be, everyone is aiming to be at rest. Otherwise, if as long as the potential difference is there, there has to be a change concentration, there has to be a movement that has to happen. So, that depolarization takes the membrane potential to a value very close to the sodium equilibrium potential, but it does not reach there, because at that point something else happens, that is opening of the potassium, voltage gated potassium channels happens, leading to an efflux of potassium. When this value is reached about plus 20 millivolts, plus 30 millivolts, plus 10 millivolts onwards, potassium channels open, leading to release of potassium from inside to the outside. Also the sodium channels close. So, sodium cannot enter inside, but potassium keeps leaving, leading to a situation in which this potential reduces. This phase is called as the repolarization phase. And then, but this potassium conductance continues to remain elevated for a long time. Because of that reason, this value goes below the resting membrane potential. This is the resting membrane potential, that is the resting membrane potential, and because of enhanced potassium conductance, the hyperpolarization or the refractory period happens. During this period, no new action potential can be generated. This is called as the refractory period, and there are two of these, absolute refractory period and relative refractory period. Do check what these are. Okay. Note that ions cannot flow through membranes. Ions can flow only through designated ion channels, and it turns out that action potential is an all or none phenomenon, stereotypical all or none phenomenon with specific characteristics. Its voltage, its amplitude does not depend on stimulus strength. I have given a lecture on graded potential and action potential and the differences between the two in my neuroscience of human movements course. Please do check that. Okay. And this refractory period is not wasted time. Refractory period is what ensures that action potentials occur at different time points. So, there is a limitation, there is a way for us to measure how many action potentials are happening per unit time, for example. These are some useful methods. So, once again going through this, revising this, in this situation sodium channels open and potassium channels are closed and sodium flows in, causing this depolarization phase. In this situation, sodium channels are closed and potassium channels open, leading to an efflux of potassium, but this potassium conductance continues to remain high, leading to a hyperpolarization. After some time, these pumps, sodium potassium pump restores balance in this after some time. So, going back to this resting membrane potential of about -. Note that this is an all or none phenomenon. Either you have this or you do not have this, and if you have this, this will be the characteristic for that cell. So, this can vary between cells and types of cells, and the membrane potential and the threshold values can vary between cells and types of cells. Critically, there are some malfunctions of this that can happen, that I have discussed in my other courses. These are called as hyperkalemia, a situation in which elevated potassium levels keep the resting membrane potential very close to threshold. You might think that that is a good thing. Wow, that means that I do not have to apply from minus 70 millivolts to minus 55 millivolts. Minus 55 is the threshold. I do not have to apply 15 millivolts to reach. Let us say that the resting membrane potential is maintained at about 58 millivolts because of an excess of potassium. Then you might think that you will only need 3 millivolt of stimulus strength to cause an action potential, but actually this leads to a situation in which action potentials cannot happen at all because of a situation that mimics absolute refractory period due to the closing of the inactivation gate of the sodium channels. Beyond the scope of this course, do check what this is. This is called as hyperkalemia. What is the physiology of hyperkalemia? Then the myelination and the characteristics of myelination and how that changes also dictate how far and how fast the potential will flow. There are disorders of myelination called as multiple sclerosis and Guillain-Barré syndrome, which I have discussed in my other course on neuroscience of human movement. Please do take a look if you are interested. So, with this we come to the end of this video. In this video we looked at action potential and we discussed the physiology of action potential in some reasonable detail. For a detailed treatment of this topic, I have given 6 to 8 lectures on this topic in my other course on neuroscience of human movements. Thank you very much for your attention.